Hey guys, Artosis here. I wanted to go ahead and talk a little bit about the problem going on in StarCraft 2, revolving around protoss. I've seen people obviously for a while now kind of complaining that protoss hasn't been winning as much. Obviously, they didn't take down any like really major tournaments in the last year, which is a little bit painful. It feels like they drop out super early, like you might get one in the round of 8 or so, and oftentimes that's it. They'll fall out pretty quickly from there. And I think that a lot of the discussion around it is not fully informed, not really intelligently done either. I do kind of find it funny when it's like, well, for instance, Zerg just has more better players or whatever, right? And things like these are obviously somewhat short-sighted. Now, I'm not saying that the game is in a perfectly balanced situation. I do not think that that's the case, nor do I think that is ever the case in StarCraft 2. It is definitely a game where the metagame shifts and strategy shift and more patches are needed over time. And hopefully those things continue to be done and be patched up. But I do want to talk about what I see as kind of like the big problem with the way Protoss is represented, right? Because if you look at it, I've heard things like half of the GM ladder across all the servers is Protoss. Yet we have very few Protosses towards the top of tournaments. How could this be? What's going on and all that? And I'm going to go ahead and use kind of like a trite old quote here and then kind of explain to you why it's mostly true. So I'm sure all of you have heard offense wins games and defense wins championships. This is pretty true in StarCraft. Okay. And we're talking just very specifically about StarCraft 2 here. And this is mostly true. Okay, so let's jump into this in the context of Protoss tournament play versus Protoss ladder play, things like that. Okay, so if you look at, first off, why are so many Protosses in GM, for instance? Okay, so if you look at the way the ladder is done, it's best of ones. A lot of people play barcodes and things like that, and it's much easier at lower levels to attack than to defend. Okay, so like if you're attacking, you're kind of in control of the game and your opponent has to be able to defend everything you're doing. So just the lower you go, the better attacking is generally. Maybe if you go to the bottom or something, it becomes such a shit show that, defense beats attacking again. But I think you kind of get my drift as you get a little bit higher up, right? So if suddenly a charge all in comes and you're not really prepared and you don't really know what you're doing, very oftentimes you're going to end up losing to that. So when you look at it, it's like there's a lot of very cheesy, aggressive Protoss players that do well on the ladder in these best of one formats, maybe on a barcode, maybe not. You know, if let's say that you have 4 or 5 barcode Protosses that you're playing against on the ladder, you don't know which one you're hitting necessarily. And so you look at that and you say, well, I mean, this could be the blink all in guy. This could be the charge all in guy. This could be the guy goes 3 Nexus real quick, right? And that can be a hard set of things to play against. But the thing is, when you've gotten good by doing things that are very aggressive and you don't have a fleshed out game, that you're really nowhere near being a pro gamer. So these players don't really count towards the top. You have to have players that have actually trained in the right way, practiced in the right way to have a more full, more complete game to be able to go in and become a professional gamer and actually make these things work for them. Now, let's talk about the GOATs for a second. Okay, so you might be still hung up on what I said. Offense wins games and defense wins championships. First off, there's a defender's advantage inherent in StarCraft 2. And that's something that's basically across all RTS games, right? Defender's advantage is a real thing. If you're on the defense, generally it's going to be harder for the player to break in, especially as you get to higher levels. In fact, the only thing I can think where that isn't true would be StarCraft 1 Zerg vs. Zerg, and that is... yeah, that's kind of a broken matchup, right? Where like if you're attacking, you're literally like advantaged most of the time there. And we can see how messed up that makes a matchup where you generally don't get more than 20 supply. But anyways, in StarCraft 2, definitely the case that the defender is advantaged. So with that defensive advantage, a big part of theory just across like games in general is the person attacking is opening themselves up to a lot of risk, right? By attacking, it's a situation where, first off, your opponent probably has a defender's advantage, so is reasonably likely to hold on against your attack. But also you're taking like a very direct idea. You're going for something, and if it doesn't work out, that's bad for you, right? So you're not straddling the line. You're not just like growing economy anymore. You're deciding to attack. And the thing is, you can have attacking players that have done very, very well. Obviously, there are some aggressive players that have done very well over time. I'm going to skip the first couple of years of StarCraft 2 because whenever a new game comes out, it's not really figured out. So there's players back then that you can look at, like MC, who had fantastic careers. A lot of his championships were won very early on there. And I'm going to go ahead and discount players like him from that era because we didn't really get into what StarCraft 2 is and has been for a long time until after that. So anyways, attacking players since then, well, you have Bjorn. He won that GSL, right? Made it to the World Championships and won that World Championships. Hasn't ever reached the same levels since. Has been improving his play. And actually, you know, if you've watched Bjorn a lot, he's been getting much better at those macro aspects and not only attacking as much as he used to. You have players like Hero, like Parting, that have been really just masters of attacking and very, very good at it, but not stably at the top for long periods of time. Obviously, there's someone like Life who got banned, and we never will really get to see how well he would have done with his very aggressive and attacking style. But if you look at the actual GOATs, right? Who's in the GOAT debate? Again, we're going to cut out MVP because he's from like the first couple of years where we don't really want to count what was going on. Although he was like more of a defensive player for sure. Everyone knows that. But we're going to go ahead and look who are the three people that are generally considered in the conversation for GOATs. It's Maru, Serral, and Rogue. What are these players extremely good at? Well, you might look at Maru and try to tell me that he's an aggressive attacking player. Well, he's one of the best attacking players, and he definitely mixes it up. But his strongest aspects are the fact that he defends better than basically anybody. If you actually go in and look at these games, it's like, yes, he's killed people with a lot of proxy racks, but he's so good at coming back out of the proxy racks into a defensive game. He's so good at slowing a game down. He's one of the only players that takes half the map against Protoss, or he was at one point, right? All those things. You look at Rogue, late game master of defense. Yes, of course he has cheeses in there. Same with Serral, right? Serral probably the best overall late game player of all time. So those are the guys that are actually considered GOATs, and they are great defensive players. Now let's talk about who are the actual best Protoss players of all time. Who are the players that in their prime, we looked at them and said, I think this guy can win the world championship. I think that this guy is maybe favored for this GSL, that type of thing, okay? And I would say that there are 4 players like that, where it's like, okay, when this guy's in his prime, we think he can win every tournament. We don't think that right now about someone like Hero, by the way. Just I want to point that out very strongly. Hero, the very aggressive player, we don't think that about. We never thought that about, and we never will think that about. But here are the best Protoss players ever, actually. Rain, Stats, Trap, and Zest. Okay? 3 of those are the 3 best defensive Protoss players ever. Rain, Stats, and Trap. They are, without a doubt, the best defensive Protoss players there have ever been. Zest is the best optimizing Protoss player ever, and I definitely put him up there with those guys. And I know some people disagree with that, but you guys are stupid because he is absolutely up there. So if you disagree with that, that's crazy. But these are the defensive players. These are the players that can basically stomp out anything you're doing and continue onwards with the game and be in a great position. Now, when we look at who's available right now, obviously, like for instance, Stats is kind of back. He's not doing all that well. Yeah, he's playing in some GSL and stuff, but obviously when you come back from the military, it does take a while to get back into top form. Will he get back into top form and be able to do that again? I don't know. But his style does stand. And if you look at like the amount of finals that he got to, for instance, you can really see that. Whereas if you look right now, who do we have representing Protoss that we're not really winning tournaments with? Well, we have Hero, who's one of the most aggressive Protoss players of all time. So like, yeah, he won a GSL and then kind of like has results that are all over the place ever since. Not a big surprise. That's kind of always been the way Hero goes. He's won a few IEMs and stuff like that, and that's great. And he's a fantastic player. I love to watch him, but this is not a player you're expecting to win IEM Katowice. And then other than that, it's like, okay, well, Creator, yeah, Creator's getting better, and he's pretty good. And I think that a lot of what carries him actually is his very defensive Protoss for Zerg. He's definitely one of the better Protoss for Zerg players out there. I think that that's part of why he's having great results, or better results than a lot of players. Who else is around right now? Like Classic. Classic is probably the best balanced player between attack and defense, and he's actually doing the best in GSL for the past year. So that kind of points towards what I'm saying, right? The better overall defensive player is doing a bit better than the other Protoss players. So, I think that the style really comes into play when we have so few players that are really grinding to be, up at that top level. Obviously, as I said before, I still feel like there are patches that need to be made and changes that need to be made to the game. But yeah, with the amount of aggressive Protoss players we have, I think just random tournament wins is about as good as you can get. You really need players to either fully develop themselves defensively, I would say especially Rain and Trap had very good range stats at a very small range, but still probably the best overall defender that we've ever had. But we just don't really have anyone that's super like that right now. Maybe with a little bit more patching, we can see Showtime really rise up out of Europe. He's I guess maybe the best defensive Protoss that comes to mind right now, but obviously pretty hard to get through that crazy European scene with Clem and Cyril and Raynor and everything. But anyways, those are some of my thoughts on why offense wins games and defense wins championships. If you agree with me, great. If you don't, let me know in the comments, and I'll have a little look at those. Thanks for watching.